Good morning, Nigeria. I like to say that TVC has a finger on the pulse and an eye on the streets. And here on the Trending Now segment, we do our best to bring you all the trending stories that are shaping the world that you and I live in. We begin today with this, where President Bola Tinubu yesterday conferred posthumous national honors of Commander of the Order of the Niger on the late Ogoni IV, Albert Bade, Edward Kobani, Theophilus Orage, and Samuel Orage. The four men were brutally murdered in 1994 during a meeting in Joko River State amidst deep political and communal tensions. Their deaths, alongside the execution of Kensaro Wiwa and 8 others in the same period, became a turning point in Nigeria's history, and it drew global outrage, sanctions, and bringing international attention to the plight of the Ogoni people and the wider Niger Delta struggle. By honoring them today, President Tinubu's government signals not just recognition of past injustices, but also a call for healing. And now at the villa, while receiving the Ogoni Consultations Committee report, the president urged Ogoni land to embrace reconciliation, pledging that his administration is backing peace, environmental cleanup, and economic revival. He also confirmed plans to restart oil production in the region, long suspended due to conflict. We said this earlier on in the newspaper review. I think it's wonderful that he conferred this honor. But let's take a look at what you had to say about this on social media. I'll take 2 tweets. Wanda Shadow says, honoring the Ogoni IV is a significant gesture, but the timing feels calculated with the push to restart oil production. It's hard not to see the markets of forces at play here, which reminds me of Isaiah Powell's take on how politics and economics are always intertwined. Very interesting. Team, we spoke about this already on the newspaper review, so we'll be very brief, if you will. But it's so sad to see that even till today, River State is still embroiled in a lot of political violence and tussle of power. But I remember, I believe it's 1994, when Ogoni land was the first grassroots movement to bring oil production to a halt, you know, in terms of the shell issue they had.
I want to commend Mr. President for starting the process of reconciliation, though 32 years later. And I think the timing is just right, because enough time has gone that we have new generations being born. So that raw pain has really gone down. But for those that are still remembering it, it's a time for us to pursue peace and to pursue development. If oil production starts again in Ogoni, then Nigeria would be able to meet its 2,000 barrels per day projections.
And of course, I really commend what he's doing. You know, these individuals, they paved ways, and now the fact that they're recognizing them, you know, just makes a lot of sense. And I think that this is the right timing. But you know how it is. Social media will always go south or go. People would not definitely agree with everything the president does, and that is okay. But I think this is timely. These are wounds that really hits us. And at the end of the day, you know, just to see that these people are recognized, it's beautiful.
It's one thing to recognize the injustices that were done, you know, back in the day, especially under the Abacha regime, where 4 of these, you know, Ogoni leaders were killed, you know, fighting for their own right. It's good that the president is now recognizing them months after recognizing Kensaro Wiwa and the 9 others that were also unjustly killed. This is a way to heal a nation that is, you know, hemorrhaging. And thank God that he's done this, and we hope that this resolves some of the bottlenecks and challenges that that side of the country or region of the country is facing.
Absolutely, Tim. I think it's very interesting to see that just like people, states and countries can have trauma and pain and history as well. Thank you so much for your input.
Thank you.
Moving on to Edo State. The Edo State Governor Monday Okpebholo is taking his message beyond Nigeria's borders and straight to the desks of foreign investors. Now, on a visit to Scotland at the 2025 Edo State Global Investment Summit, which took place in Glasgow from the 20th to the 22nd of September, the governor rolled out what he calls 10 months of achievements in agriculture, infrastructure, and security, assuring the world that Edo State is now open for business. This is Governor Okpebholo selling business. Take a look.
Nigeria is very safe for investment. The economy is growing. The World Bank, the IMF, have rated us very high. The president has been able to stabilize our economy at this Global Business and Investment Summit here in Scotland. Today,
Now, what is very interesting about this shift is the fact that rather than waiting for investors to come knocking, Governor Okpebholo is going global. He's trying to rebrand Edo as a safe and profitable destination for capital. But beyond these promises, we hope that this new pitch will translate into jobs, industries, and real opportunities for Edo people back home. Edo State is a double-edged sword because there's a lot of violence there and cultism. On the other hand, the youth are very, very passionate. The youth are very, very passionate, and they're very, very hardworking, and they can easily be translated into a workforce. Let's take a look at some social media comments. Pressure says, Nigeria is very safe, but kidnappers are ravaging your state on a daily basis. Team, very interesting. Let's touch on this. It's a shame to see that, Edo has lots of arable land. It has a lot of agro-processing potential, but sometimes it's often marred by the cultism and the violence in that state. But we're seeing Governor Okpebholo coming out to say, come and invest. Edo is safe. I want foreign investment for my people. I want to grow globally. Yeah,
and I was listening to him, and I was waiting for him to say, these are the numbers. Kidnapping has gone down by so and so percent, and all that and all that. One thing we have to understand is that as governor, you're the chief administrator, chief security officer, chief marketer, you're chief everything about your state. And going outside to sell your state is the way to go. I like to commend him for doing that, and I hope that this effort yields dividends for him.
And they say that if the mountain doesn't come to Muhammad, Muhammad will go to the mountain.
Absolutely.
So I like what he's doing because, for every state, you need to go out and talk about your state. You cannot just sit down and close doors and expect to get investors. But what I will say is that, when we talk about Edo, we talk about violence and all of that. I wanted you to tell us, like, the amount that has reduced. Don't just say there's no, there's security in Edo now without telling us, because we've heard a lot of things that have happened there. I love the fact that you went out, but I think that you should let us know how the security has gotten better under your leadership.
That's right. So the government is actually doing so much to market the state within and outside of Nigeria, which is the right thing to do. I also see some other governors, talking about Bago, and some other governors who are also doing everything to ensure that they woo investors into the country. But one thing is, this administration is doing so well. Talk about the Edo administration under Okpebholo against all odds. Some people are saying that he won't be able to deliver, but he has been, shaming his detractors. We want to see him do more, and we say we want Edo people, Edo citizens to also contribute to the betterment of their state. Absolutely. Proactive leadership is welcomed. Yeah. I have to say, he's in Scotland. I was hoping to see him in a kilt with some bagpipes, but oh well. Moving on to more disturbing news. A video of Nigeria's school feeding program is going viral, but not for the right reasons. In the clip, what's meant to be food for children looks so poor in quality that it's hard to even recognize as food. Now, social media has since erupted with outrage. Nutrition experts, to put things into context for you, have warned that a child's diet is directly related to their learning outcomes. And UNICEF estimates that malnutrition contributes to nearly 50% of under-5 mortality in Nigeria. And poor feeding greatly undermines children's ability to focus in school. So beyond this viral clip, it's scary to see that if our children are not being nourished properly, the promise of education itself is being undercut. This is very sad. Let's take a look at social media. Let's take a look at what you had to say. Danu says, at least they're eating. It's better than none. What of those in the streets who don't have anything to taste? Mazi Uche says, this looks like colored water with eba. You will faint by the time you hear how many billions that was used to cook this water. And finally, same Mazi Uche also says, this looks like water soup with gari. Only God knows how many millions have been quoted for this. Team, very quickly, please weigh in on this. It's some kids in private school don't even fetch water for themselves anymore or even iron their own clothes. And here are these children just making do with these meals. Equity, indeed, is very, very important for all Nigerian children, not just some.
The school feeding program is a bold step by the government, but the quality of the food, the kind of food, how healthy is it? Before now, we saw a batch of bread supplied that were completely bad, and so on and so forth. And this video we're watching right now is not also very encouraging. So I will like the government to take another look at the school feeding program and decide whether they want to continue with it or whether they want to scrap it. If you are going to continue with it, the quality has to be better. These are young, growing children we're feeding.
And I'm very heartbroken because I tell you something, the government might be putting money into this, but somebody somewhere is making sure that this money do not get to these people. And that is water and eba, if you ask me, dirty water and eba, because that is not a soup. And for the tweets that you read, the person saying that at least they're eating what? After you see that these children will develop strange sicknesses and you wonder why they are sick. Like the guy, the little boy, you can even see he's not happy. You know, when you're eating and you'll be happy. Like, look at how he looks sad. This is so bad. I feel like the government really needs to look into it. And if you're a person that they put this into your hands and you rather take the money and give the children bad food, posterity will judge you.
Some of the food that they serve to these guys, you know, even people in the prison do not deserve this kind of food, let alone people who are the children of you know, our future generations. So the government actually budgeted, I think, 100 billion naira 2024, even the same 2025 appropriation bill. So how are we disbursing these monies? Yes, the federal government is playing its own role. What about the state government? How are they ensuring that the social safety net and all of the things that they budget for, the upkeep of the children, the people, and everyone is well taken care of and well disbursed and well utilized? So people have to be questioned about how they monitor this and how they implement this, because we can't have the life of our children, you know, being, you know, spoiled this way in terms of giving them
and the thing is that Ibrahim might say the person that gave them this food, can the person eat the food?
You don't know the kind of food the person is eating.
The person would definitely not be able to eat that kind of food.
Big question.
It's so sad. It's really sad.
Really sad.
Absolutely. Indeed. Thank you so much for your input, team. I'm a bit sad. Moving on into international news, at the United Nations General Assembly, Kenya's President William Ruto set the stage ablaze with a viral speech that has everyone on social media talking. His message was very clear and very apt. He said that Africa is tired of being sidelined in global decision-making and that it's time for the continent to claim its rightful place at the UN Security Council. This is what he had to say.
You cannot claim to be the United Nations while disregarding the voice of 54 nations. It is not possible. Africa is no longer willing to wait on the margins of global governance while decisions about peace, security, and development are made without our understanding, without our perspectives, and without our voice.
Let me put this into context for you. Africa is home to over 1.4 billion people, and it often dominates the Security Council's agenda, from peacekeeping missions to conflict resolutions and so much more. But yet, it is the only continent without a permanent seat at the table. Meanwhile, the 5 big powers in the world, the US, China, Russia, the UK, and France, continue to hold rights that shape global outcomes for us, for Africa. But this fiery intervention by President William Ruto, it wasn't just a rhetoric. I think that it was a call for structural reform for the UN. For the longest time, Africa has been pushing for 2 permanent seats and 2 additional non-permanent seats for 2 decades under the Ezulwini consensus. But decades later, little has changed. It's a shame to see this. It's important to note that the UN was not created, unfortunately, with Africa in mind. And yet Africa benefits and indeed suffers from a lot of their policies. Let's take a look at social media. I'll take 3 tweets. Akech Andrew says, as much as some Kenyans may not like him, William Ruto shakes tables when he stands up and talks about Africa. Apart from Gaddafi, William has been the only African leader who has stood tall in that podium. These are very powerful words. Decisions on African security and directions are decided without Africans. That does not define United Nations. Kwame Nkrumah says, you're not Nkrumah, it says, the same Security Council seats which will cause animosity between African states. We need a united Africa with a single foreign policy before we can even get that seat. Something to think about. And finally, Zimbo says, I don't like him, but he's right. The only problem is he's begging to be included in a toothless group which only works if its decisions correlate with what Western powers want. Team, we have to be very quick, but I thought this speech was very, very charged. It was speaking truth to power. It was sort of very intellectually sticking it to the man, if you will. He stood up there and he basically said, you cannot keep benefiting from Africa and sidelining us. We want to take a seat at the table. We know our place. Yeah,
it's as if President Tinubu and William Ruto had a phone call before,
absolutely,
before this meeting, because both of them spoke passionately about this particular issue. And we all know that William Ruto speaks well, passionately, and when he means it, he says it starkly, you know, in such a way that you'll know that, look, I'm talking to you.
And when Ruto speaks, of course, you listen. I love the power in his voice. And beautiful speech he delivered. At the end of the day, Africa stands tall, and we should take our spot. You know, you shouldn't have discussions when we are not in the room. We need to be in that room.
I want to see Africa that is rising, Africa that speaks one language, Africa that destroys all of the colonial borders that they created for us, so much so that we have United States of Africa with one currency, as they do also in the West, because they've been peppering us, they've been stealing us blind with all of the things they are doing. I want a country, a continent that is, because they say collaboration is the language of the jungle and barbarism. Competition rather is a language of barbarism and the jungle, but collaboration is the language of the civilized. That is what I want to see for Africa.
Very, very interesting. I love that quote by you. I love that quote, Ibrahim. Thank you for sharing that. But I will say this, I'm curious, Tim, what do you make of this? You know, African leaders, a lot of them are, you know, up there on the podium. They're addressing these people who know they have the power in their hands. I'm curious as to what's going on in their minds, if this will actually translate into policy, or if they're really focused on the bigger powers and Israel and Palestine, or if they're actually really taking us into consideration, or is this all just symbolic?
Yes. The thing there is, you know, you can't have US, China, Russia, France and the UK dictating for the rest of the world, because they are the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. So every African country is demanding for that permanent seat at the African, so that whenever we make decisions, they do not make decisions for us to follow. We sit at the table and negotiate, you know, from the position of strength rather than position of weakness.
And we're not begging for that seat. We deserve the seat. We're not begging.
Unfortunately, we can't take it by force, but thank you so much.